We're at Upper Lee Meadow today on Lee Canyon Road in the Mount Charleston National Forest, and this is just outside of Las Vegas. You're looking at the South Sister and the North Sister, and actually you can see the third, which is the Black Rock Sister. But where we're headed today is up this hill to a ridge that's going to take us, in fact, there you see on that flat area right up in the center. Well, if you look at the left side and trace your way down, you can see that there is kind of a gradual ridge. We're going to take that ridge up to the top. At the top left, we're going to hit the Charleston Loop Trail. And from there, we're going to see how much energy we have left and if we have enough to get up to Lee Peak, which is our goal for today. And maybe we'll come down, we'll return a different route. We'll see. I may return down the right side of this, I call it a plateau area, where I ascended the left side, maybe descend the right side, and end up down at the ski area. You can see that right in the center, ski run in Lee Canyon, and then make it back to the beast here. So either way, it's going to be a full day up in the Mount Charleston wilderness from Lee Canyon to Kyle Canyon and up to Lee Peak. So here we go. Okay, we've climbed our first avalanche slope right above where I parked, and now we're in a more open area, much more level. Old road. This road is going to lead to a water tower, which is the beginning of the approach ridge to the summit of Kyle Canyon, a couple miles below Lee Peak. So, yeah, let's continue on this road. One thing that is a little different is that it has rained recently, so all the rocks everywhere are a little more loose. The soil's a little bit more firm than it would be if it was dusty and dry, especially on the avalanche slopes. So it's kind of a toss-up whether it's better to traverse this area in this type of terrain or the avalanche slope type of terrain when it's wet. Just stay away from, once you're on the slope, stay away from any larger rocks or logs. Anything large can come loose and smash you. I saw a boulder on Lee Canyon Road this morning that had fallen from above. And when the soil gets wet, large things that were just hanging on decide to let go. And if one of those things is above you, it could ruin your day. Okay, onward. Let's find that water tower. Okay, here we are. I called it a green water tower, actually. It's better referred to as a water reservoir. This reservoir marks the beginning of the gradual approach ridge up to the Charleston Loop Trail. And you can see that ridge just to the left of the water reservoir. But what I wanted to point out also is here is the road I just came up. And there's a little turnaround here, but this other road heading down actually goes to Foxtail Canyon and the Girl Scout camp. It's an abandoned Girl Scout camp down in Foxtail Canyon, just so you can be aware of all the connections around here. But for now, let's head up this approach ridge, and we'll try to stay as close to the summit of the ridge as we can as we ascend. We'll have to divert to the right in the beginning when there are rocky bluffs and cliffs. Don't have to divert too far to the right, and then near the end, as we get closer to the summit up there, we'll need to divert to the left to circumvent the rocks and bluffs, and then we hit the Charleston Loop Trail. Okay, here we go. Okay, water reservoir, road, and ridge. And we're going to head right up this ridge. It's a nice, fairly gradual ridge, class 2, meaning I don't have to use my hands at least until, yeah, there's one spot, I think, where I had to use my hands, but it's very brief. It's like lifting yourself over maybe a 4-foot rock. So anyway, yeah, and it's hard to get lost. Just stay as close to the center of this ridge as you can, and before you know it, you'll be on the North Loop Trail. Wow, this ridge is definitely rapid ascent at first, and I've achieved the initial ascent to where it begins to level off. You can see downward. I have, in just, I don't know, 10-15 minutes, I've ascended about 400 feet or more. Just wanted to show you that the ridge on the west side here, you're looking down on Lee Canyon, and there is actually, through the trees, the trailhead for the Bristlecone Pine Trail. And there you can see, looking over, through and beyond Lee Canyon, and there you're looking toward, that may be a part of McFarland Peak right there. On the other side of this ridge, the east side, you have Foxtail Canyon, and the Girl Scout camp is below, and we have a page on Kyle Canyon summit, Lee Canyon to Kyle Canyon via Foxtail Canyon, where we took that canyon, Foxtail Canyon, up to the summit area of the Kyle Canyon, Lee Canyon Ridge. And that route is a good one if you're heading toward Mummy Mountain. And here you see Mummy's Head area. Well, let's see, I think this may be part of the main section of Mummy Mountain. I don't know from this perspective. And here we're looking at Mummy's Head. So anyway, that gives you an idea, and you can see, yeah, when it's wet, yeah, definitely stay away from the edge of stuff, because you don't know how securely anchored any rock you're standing on is. And boy, there's a sheer cliff on the east side of this ridge. As I mentioned at first, we hug the west side of the ridge as close to the top as we can. And so let's continue. As I mentioned, you stay as close to the center of this ridge as you can. And for the most part, there is a great pathway that's very gradual along the summit of this ridge. There again is Mummy Mountain, Foxtail Canyon area, below us to the east, and there is Lee Canyon and Lee Canyon Road, and you can see the little more of the upper trailhead for Bristlecone Pine Trail. There's the parking area right there. And there is Lee Peak. It seems like we've gotten a lot closer in just a brief amount of time. Let's see where we are at. We've ascended probably 500 feet by now. Not too long to get up here. So yeah, continue on the upper spine of this ridge and divert to the right around any rocks and obstacles. Once you get to the halfway point, which I'll show you in a bit, then it's divert to the left around rocks and obstacles. And again, our goal is the left side of this plateau area we looked at from below. So here we go. Okay, there's Lee Peak, and there's the beginning of the plateau area. And again, we're going to summit at the left side of that, continuing on up this ridge. This is what it looks like on the ridge. Very, very beautiful. And first bristlecone pine trees appearing. We are now at about 8,700 feet. So we're closing in on 9,000 feet, where the bristlecone pines begin to really multiply. And you can see the ridge there when we reach the upper far side of that ridge. We'll be on the Charleston Loop Trail and continuing on over to Lee Peak. And this is pretty cool. There's a shot of the moon at this time. It's what is it? It's about closing in on 7 o'clock, and yeah, temperature wise, the temperature in the Las Vegas Valley is predicted to be between 107 and 115, depending on if you're in the North Valley or down in Henderson. And it was 87 when I left. And when I arrived at the Upper Lee Meadow, it was about 57, 30-degree difference. Gives you an idea. People think, oh, how can you hike on a day when, you know, it's going to get upwards to, you know, above 110 degrees. And I say, where I am, no, it's not. For every 1,000 feet you gain, you lose about 5 degrees. And I started out about 2,000 feet, and now we are, as I mentioned, closing in on 9,000. And one more point of interest, there is a ski run for Lee Canyon ski area, and you can see as you look closely at Lee Peak from this perspective, you can see potential summit routes, but I understand that those routes, when you get close to the summit, if you're going to go up from the ski area, when you get close to the summit, you are going to experience some very steep rocky areas. So that's why I like this more gradual ridge. It's very beautiful, and it's really fun to be on this ridge. So let's continue onward and upward. Continuing along the ridge, hugging the upper area here, and you can see cliff to the left and the ability to skirt rocky areas is to your right. Although it's steep and there are some avalanche slopes, still you're able to skirt the rocky areas and continue on up. Just get an idea, other possibilities here to get up to the upper ridge. There's the upper ridge of Kyle and Lee Canyons. You can see a couple potential approach gullies up this way going out of the Foxtail Canyon. These are not to be confused with the gully that I took on the Foxtail route. But these are, especially this one over here, can be accessed from Avalanche Trail Road off of Lee Canyon Road. That's lower than Lee Canyon Meadows by about a mile or so. And then here's this wider gully, but you can see there's a lot of brush and trees. It doesn't look like a very good approach gully. And you can see there's some cliffs there, or at least ledges to overcome. So if you're in the gully, that doesn't look like a really good way to ascend to the upper ridge line up there. However, potentially this ridge in the center could be a route, but then when you get near the top, you can see that there's a rocky outcrop up there. Maybe you could go around it. We don't know. And I don't know that that's going to be a major route. I'm going to stick to the Foxtail Canyon route, which is actually up ahead. I'll show you. From here is a very good perspective. For today, yeah, the gradual mid-ridge route. And then just to give you a quick 360 looking around, there's up toward the moon and Lee Peak. Then over in this direction is McFarland Peak, and then further on over is the South Sister, and then here's the ridge that I've been on. I can't turn too well where I'm standing, so that's about the closest to a 360-degree view as we're going to get today. Okay, at least at this point. Onward. And by the way, here we're looking straight down at the ski lodge in Lee Canyon. And you can see ski runs going up from that point, and perhaps there are some routes. I might try one route up that way. We'll see. Okay, here we have the first barrier of any significance. It's this rocky bluff. And no, we're not going to ascend to the summit of the bluff, but rather we're going to descend a bit and skirt around the lower right edge or west edge of the bluff. And so that's how we handle this first barrier. And yeah, I guess if you're into rock climbing and exposure and loose rocks on this wet day, you could, it looks pretty doable that you could ascend this bluff, but I'm just not sure it's a good thing to do, because once you get to the top, you may be faced with a drop off on the other side. So yeah, we're skirting around the lower right edge of the bluff. And just to give you an idea where we are here, here's the ridge we have been on, and you can see it's a very nice ridge. It is not like a trail though. You're climbing over obstacles, but they're not significant. So this is actually very good. And now we're going to descend here and skirt around this bluff. Okay, there's that bluff. And as you can see, there is a way around the lower end on the west side. And the key now from here on out is that you're hugging the edge, the lower edge of any cliffy area, and trying to stay as close to the top of the ridge as you can. But you don't want to descend too far because, yes, you can see it goes down pretty steeply. And today everything's wet, of course. So we are going to, and then here's the rest of the 360-degree view. So we're going to try and stay as close to the upper end as we can, but skirting around just this narrow passageway at the base of the rocks. And then, of course, here's the view in the distance. There's McFarland Peak. And over here, South and North Sister, just to keep our perspective. And Lee Canyon ski area. Another kind of lodge at the base of another ski lift area. So let's continue on along this narrow passageway just below the cliffs to our left. Okay, we're further on up the slope. Once again, after skirting that rocky bluff, we reascended to the summit area, and you can see, yeah, if you're on cliffs and bluffs on the way up, you may be facing drop-offs like this. So that's why I drop down and skirt the lower right edge of the rocky areas. But yeah, a couple of points of interest here. One is just to the left of those rocks is the point where we will reach, and it's a little below that hill to the left and below that hill that you're looking at. That's the point right in the center here where we're going to reach the North Loop Trail. So we got a ways to go, but let's see, what are we altitude wise? We are at about 9,000 feet. And here is another interesting point. You can't see it really well, but here is the Foxtail Canyon approach to the upper ridge of Lee and Kyle Canyon. And we've got a page for that. I just took that last week, went up to the summit of that ridge there, and then yeah, you can see an extremely beautiful limestone shelf right up there on the ridge. And I've got some great video and pictures of that limestone shelf. And then I continued along the upper ridge and then headed down this approach here, this more gradual I call it the mid ridge in Lee Canyon. And I got lost on the way down, definitely. It has only been my second time heading down. This is only my second time heading up this ridge, so we'll see. The first time, actually, I navigated beautifully, but that last time I was on the ridge, I got lost every place you could possibly get lost. Okay, anyway, yeah, there's the Foxtail Canyon. And that Foxtail Canyon Springs is in that little cave opening in that cliff. Very beautiful spot. And as a matter of fact, there's a little shrine that was created by the Girl Scouts where they've hung a few ornaments, and you can see them still standing if you see them hanging from the ceiling. Yeah, don't touch them, because who knows if that camp is ever coming back. And that's one of the last reminders of the camp. But the way I ascended was this ridge just to the right of the wash there where that cave opening is, and just ascended up the ridge right up to this point at the summit. It's a great way to ascend to the upper ridge of Lee and Kyle Canyon. The only thing is, as you get near the summit, yeah, it gets pretty steep on those avalanche slopes. So this is much more gradual. We're going to continue on up this way, mid-ridge. Well, this is a pretty nice level, wide area along the top of this slope. And yeah, you can see we're going to be heading up to that point just to the left of what I call the plateau area, and just below that hill there. And you can see along the way there are going to be some barriers here, and the next barrier we reach is going to be it's about a 100 yards long cliff that we're going to skirt the base of that cliff to the right and west, and we're going to stay very close to the lower edge of that cliff. And about halfway along the cliff there is there's an opening, a gap, that we're going to ascend back to the summit of this ridge, and it'll be more gradual for a while, and then it will again become rocky, as you can see above. And when we hit that point up above there, we begin skirting the left or the east side of rocky obstacles. But I'll show you where those points are. For now, one of the great things about this ridge is that there are beautiful places along the ridge where you just got a tremendous view. Can't see much up in that direction with the rising sun right over Mummy Mountain. But yeah, look at this ridge. And these are some very beautiful places. There you see the North Sister. And by the way, this route, don't expect to see anyone. I've never seen a soul on this route, and this will be my fourth passageway along the route. So yeah, no company, just be prepared to have a little wilderness navigation experience, and an ability to navigate avalanche slopes, and basically you stay as close to the summit of this ridge as you can, and it's going to take you right up to the summit of Lee Kyle Canyon. By the way, as you look at the little plateau here and to the left where we're going to summit, you can see Lee Peak. And so you see that it's not too far from Lee Peak when we reach that summit area. I believe this is where that next bluff is. And it doesn't look impossible to climb up the side of this if you're into rock climbing. Little bit of exposure, being that I'm not into rock climbing and exposure, and that it is, I'm totally alone up here. I'm going to skirt around the lower edge of this bluff, and we'll see if this is the beginning of that long cliff. Curiously, that last bluff was not the long cliff, because a few avalanche slopes here, but I've stayed close to the top. This is that long, maybe 1,000-foot, less than a quarter mile cliff. It's like the 100-yard dash, only you're not running. This is where you hug the edge of this cliff. You hug the right lower edge, because you definitely don't want to try to traverse in a wider circle, because yes, everything below us is pretty steep, wet avalanche slopes. Okay, let's skirt the edge of this cliff till we find, in about 1,000 feet, there will be an opening through these cliffs, and that's where we're going to ascend and get back up on the ridge for a nice wide section of maybe, I don't know, a quarter mile. We'll see. The area along the lower edge of this cliff wall is not too generously wide. This spot is a little wider. There are some spots that are very narrow, but as I said, you don't want to stray too far down because that is very steep. There is a nice little passageway if you hug this cliff area, and there you see the south and north sister, and down through the trees here is a ski run. Looks like the lower, no, it's the upper area of that ski run. So that would be interesting to head up that ski run. I had envisioned trying one approach that would be up that ski run and then angling over and on upward to this point or above. Yeah, I'm not seeing it right now, but maybe that could be an additional approach to the summit of the Lee Kyle Canyon summit ridge. Okay, but continuing along this cliff for now, and like I said, it's about 1,000 feet, and we should be approaching the gully opening soon. And by the way, there is the upper trailhead for the Bristlecone Pine Trail. So it's always good to know all the surroundings. And also, looking down this way, there's Upper Lee Meadow, where we began. So you can see we have ascended quite a bit. In fact, we are closing in. Once we ascend through the gully and we're back on the ridge, it will be the halfway point altitude-wise to the summit of the Lee Kyle Canyon Ridge. Okay, we have reached the gully opening, and you're looking back at the area we just traversed, hugging the lower edge of these cliffs. And I'd say maybe 50 yards, half a football field in length to skirt these cliffs. But your reward is this gully opening. And you can see there is a slight class 3. You're just lifting yourself over that little ledge above, but not much to speak of. And once you get through this opening, you're in a wide open, very gradual incline, top of the ridge, very beautiful area. And as you look around here, even, we are in more of the bristlecone pine zone. There are a few, very few other kinds of pines here. We're mostly bristlecone, and we are right now at about 9,400 feet. 9,500 would be the halfway point, which is going to be up above these little obstacles and up through the gully to the center of the ridge again. We'll be a little beyond 9,500. So up we go. And again, you could probably take this slope downward and end up in the upper ski run. And one of these days, maybe I'll do that. But that would be another approach. You park at the ski area and just head straight up this slope, finding the base of it. I guess I need to descend first and then make a note of where the base of this slope is. And that would be an additional approach. But you can see, wow. Yeah, it's rather steep, but it's doable. And there's the cliff we just skirted again. And here's the gully we're about to ascend. We're about halfway up the gully. And you see the area we just traversed. And here it gets a little easier. So the worst is behind us. And the rest all the way up to the upper Mount Charleston Loop Trail is, there's some steep slopes, but very little, if any, challenging sections like this gully. And if you're a seasoned rock climber, this isn't even very challenging, but for this trail runner, yes it is. It's about as much as I like to do. Okay, onward and upward. One last look at the gully, because after all, I'm going to need to find this gully in order to descend. And during the descent, you want to notice that these cliff edges come in layers. Do not be tempted to take that upper layer, because the upper layer is going to end in a dead end. You want to take the lower layer on the return trip. I made that mistake before, so that I'll let you know a little bit more about how to head up this ridge and how not to head up the ridge. And you can see, had I continued along the and not gone up the gully, we would have been faced with a cliff face again. And I don't know if there's another gully ahead, but you can see things are leveling out a bit, which is good. And we'll reach the center of the ridge in just a little bit. Things level out a lot. Very beautiful up there, wide, lots of bristlecone pines. Okay, onward. Back on the summit of the ridge. Very nice, wide open up here. But on the way down, you got to ask yourself, how are you going to find the gully? Because there's nothing right here that looks like a gully. And if you miss this turn right here, you're going to end up at a cliff dead end, which is the dead end I skirted when I was on my way up here. This is the beginning of the gully. Doesn't look like a gully, but what we have here is a handy little cairn that I placed, and that cairn, as you're heading down the ridge in this direction, that cairn says angle sharply to the left and you will be in the gully. So something to remember. In the meantime, we're on our way up, not down, so let's continue along. And by the way, lest you miss that last cairn, here's another little cairn I placed, which tells you that you need to look for that other cairn to turn left, because you'll be heading down this ridge at that point. The other cairn is only, I don't know, 50 feet below, but you want to be watching for it. That's why I placed the first cairn. Okay, onward and upward. Here's what I'll call the bench. This is a great halfway point to take a rest. I'm going to call it Carpenter Ant Bench because there's quite a carpenter ant colony in this perfect bench. And if you're sitting here too long, they get mad. Okay, continuing on up the ridge. And by the way, here's a 360-degree view. So that's upward. We're in the center of the ridge. There you can see, I believe that might be Lee Peak right through the trees. Looks pretty close now. We're only 1,500 feet below, less than 1,500 feet. And then here's looking down the ridge. Yeah, it's more gradual than what I was on before, but wow, it's still a pretty healthy incline. And then, yeah, you're looking toward Mummy Mountain through the trees and the Lee Kyle Canyon Summit Ridge up there, and then back to the ridge ahead and our Carpenter Ant Bench. Continuing to ascend this nice wide portion of the ridge, and we are right at the base of the next barrier, and this is actually the beginning of what I'll call the upper barriers. We passed through the lower barriers earlier when you saw rocks and cliffs that we were skirting, and here's the key to navigating this ridge is at the lower barriers you navigate to the right of the barriers and hugging the barriers as close to the top as you can. For the upper barriers, you're going to navigate to the left, and maybe don't hug the barriers so high this time. In fact, you'll see a very faint trail, and for some way you can continue that, and then eventually you need to head back up to the summit of the ridge where you'll see the North Loop Trail. Okay, onward. Here it is, that very faintest of trails. And you can see the cliff barriers up here. And here that little faint trail is continuing. And so we're going to continue following it. And I think it goes right up through that opening there. So here we go. Well, that very faint trail continues. You can barely see it right in the center of the screen here. In this case, You don't want to hug the cliffs up there, but you want to continue on this very faint trail, a little below the base of the cliffs. So continuing on upward. Okay, continuing upward, you see the faint trail, but notice up ahead, things are leveling off a bit. Rocks are disappearing, and we're not too far below the upper North Loop Trail. We are at about 10,300 feet at this point. And looking around, yeah, there's not a generous passageway here. It's just a very, very faint trail, and sometimes it disappears and you got to climb over rocks. But if you can keep finding it, it at least gives you somewhat of a level place to stand as you're ascending this avalanche slope. So yeah, let's go ahead and continue on up. And by the way, you're looking straight over at the main summit of Mummy Mountain, that band of trees you see near the top of the cliff. On your right is the passageway to the main approach to the summit. And you can see right in the center there, a V-shaped canyon. That is the final approach to Mummy Mountain by the approach that most people take when they ascend the Trail Canyon trailhead and then head on up the North Loop Trail. And there you see in the distance, you're seeing down in the distance up the Highway 95 corridor. And that's pretty much as I'm going to be able to turn on this spot. So let's continue on up and get beyond these rocks and up to that North Loop Trail. Okay, this is where we turn upward. You can see we're going pretty much straight up, but we're heading toward that horizon up there, which is the summit of the Lee Canyon Ridge. And how do we find this on the way back? Well, I'll see if I can place a cairn marker at the upper end of this. But on the way back, here's a little cairn marker that marks the point at which you begin to circle around to your left. And that faint, the very faintest of trails, begins to appear, and you take that downward. So, and then you skirt the cliffs here, or the high areas. So yeah, let's continue on up and do this final steep slope and arrive at the upper North Loop Trail, just a couple miles, if even that, below Lee Peak. We are at the summit of the Lee Canyon Ridge, and here in front of us is the North Loop Trail heading downward, circling around, and then it continues on up toward Lee Peak. There's Charleston Peak through the trees, and it's a very beautiful area. I call it the Upper North Loop Trail. And just so I know where to start heading down this ridge, the key is this log right here. Between this high point and that high point, and you can see Mummy Mountain between. Good view. I did place a breadcrumb here. There it is. So, wait, there it is. not very conspicuous, so you really have to know it's there. So now let's rest just a little bit and then head toward Lee Peak, see how far we have to go. By the way, just to give you an idea of timing, it's taken 3.5 hours to get to this point from the Upper Lee Meadow. And probably, I don't know, I'm estimating 5 hours to the summit of Lee Peak, simply because we are on a good trail now, which is very different from the slopes I've been on. That last slope that went straight up was about 18 inches of elevation gain per step. So you can see the steepness of that. And that's right over this edge here and down. So anyway, yeah, let's take a little rest and then get on the North Loop Trail and head to Lee Peak. And by the way, now that we've got a good broadside view of Mummy Mountain, let's zoom in on that approach. You see the band of trees just below the upper cliffs there, and right in the center you'll see a little V-shaped canyon. That is the approach canyon. Yeah, there it is. That is the approach canyon to the summit of Mummy Mountain. Very fun trip, and look on the Mummy Mountain West page of Las Vegas Area Trails to see how to get to that point and how to get to the summit of Mummy Mountain. And that is my favorite mountain in the Mount Charleston Wilderness, simply because there's such a beautiful forest at the top, and the summit area is so huge. You can wander around there. You could put a football field up there. Okay. Onward. About 10,700 feet on the North Loop Trail now. And let's see how long it takes us to get to Lee Peak. This is the point where the connection occurred, and you see those two trees. That'll be my marker. Plus you can see Mummy. Plus there is a rise on that side and a rise on this side, making this a kind of a saddle. So, so those are my markers in a log here. Okay, so yeah, heading toward Lee Peak now on the North Loop Trail, and our first really good view of Charleston Peak. There she is. Okay, onward to Lee Peak. I want to make a note of this point in the trail. Remember that plateau we saw from Lee Canyon? And we arrived at the upper left side of that plateau. This is the upper right side, and there's the plateau up there. The reason I want to point this out is that I believe I saw what looked like a trail that began at this point. And there's even a little cairn on the log here. And see, look at this. Very, very faint. Is it possible that this will lead down into Lee Canyon? We don't know. But we will check it out at some point. Definitely lots of very steep slopes here, but maybe this trail winds around and ends at the ski lift area in Lee Canyon. We don't know. At some point we'll find out. This is a nice little spot if you're doing a 2-day trip up to Charleston Peak. It's not too far beyond where I summited the Lee Kyle Canyon Ridge that we're on right now. But it looks like, yeah, if you're making a 2-day trip, there's a little spot here, and there are a few others along the way here that you could camp overnight. Uh-oh. That sounds like thunder. I prepared for everything else on this trip, but a thunderstorm. So lets you know that, wow, you got to be prepared for a lot of stuff in the mountains. Yeah, if we get hail and snow and freezing rain and lightning, that'll certainly bring some excitement to this adventure. Okay, so onward. Let's head up to Lee Peak. And there's another view of Charleston Peak, and then the ridge between Charleston and Griffith Peak. Beautiful ridge up there. It's the South Climb Trail. Will take you along that ridge. There's Griffith Peak. And then if you'd head down the other side of Griffith Peak, you'll end up in Lovell Canyon. Okay, there's a little more close up of the ridge. Great place to camp, by the way, if you're doing a 2-day experience. And again, Charleston Peak. And then up ahead, there is Lee Peak through the trees. So yeah, we're approaching it pretty rapidly. Wow. Look at the expanse down there. That's Kyle Canyon. Beautiful canyon. And we're definitely getting some rain, more thunder. So who knows what we're going to face ahead. But plugging on ahead to the summit of Lee Peak. Here we go. The trees are extremely beautiful here. You can see all kinds of shapes. And then so are the rocks, where there are pillar formations. And countless other types of formations that are beyond naming. But yeah, what a beautiful place, this Upper North Loop Trail. Here's a great view down and out the lower end of Kyle Canyon. You can see La Madre Mountain right in the center there. Looks like there's a snowfield there. It's actually, I call it the permanent snowfield. It's actually a limestone slide, very steep, referred to as Devil's Slide by the locals here. And then looking beyond, can't see real clearly, but you're looking down into the northern portion of Las Vegas Valley. And yes, there's some rain falling, but the good news is I believe that the darkest clouds are downwind, and so we may not experience a whole lot of rain. But if you listen carefully, you can hear the rain falling. Upward toward Lee Peak. ascending Lee Peak, and through the trees there, another weather station located way up on that cliff. And there's Mummy Mountain in the background. Okay, yeah, the trail's winding around. At some point soon, we'll be leaving this trail and taking the little side trail up to the summit of Lee Peak. Okay, it's not so obvious how to get up to Lee Peak from the North Loop Trail. I think anywhere up this ridge would do, but we'll go a little further and catch the ridge a little further up. I believe that the trail levels off in a bit, and that's where we want to head up the ridge, although this would work also. It's about a quarter mile to the summit of Lee Peak from here, so we are just at the base of the summit. North Loop Trail levels off a bit. Right at this point is a plateau right here. You'll know it because it's the first plateau you're going to see from along the North Loop Trail after that point where we started to ascend just a bit ago. And at this plateau, you can see the very faintest, and believe me, it is faint, a route up this ridge just on this side of those rocks, and you just hug the edge of the rocks up there, and that's the way to the summit of Lee Peak. So let's go ahead and leave the North Loop Trail here and head up to the summit of Lee Peak. Okay, that last plateau that I was on down far around the corner there was the wrong plateau marker. And it led to the peak over there that is not Lee Peak. So that's the way to what we'll call not Lee Peak. I took a silent video at the top of that little rise. This plateau is the way up to Lee Peak, and then here is the a cairn here to mark that yes, this is the way. And it's a similar thing to the last one, in that you head up this ridge. That's why I mistook it for the Lee Peak approach, because you're on the North Loop Trail, you're at a plateau, and you're looking up and leaving the trail and just skirting that cliff edge up there all the way to the summit of Lee Peak. So yeah, it's like the third plateau once you get to this upper end of the North Loop Trail. And I've shown you about as many markers as I can show. So let's go ahead and head up to Lee Peak. Okay, continuing up this approach to the summit of Lee Peak. And there are a few different ways one could go, but you're heading upward toward the summit. And then here's a look around. There's that plateau, and you can see the little cairn or the rock pile down there. That is your target on the way back. There from Griffith Peak to Charleston Peak, and then below. Looks pretty rugged. Okay. Onward and upward. Okay, I can see the summit of Lee Peak up ahead, and I get a 360. Yeah, we're on quite a slope. There's Charleston Peak. Let's see if we can turn. Yeah. So let's continue on up. Here we are on the summit of Lee Peak. And yes, sheer cliffs going straight down in this direction toward Lee Canyon. And as long as we're talking about Lee Canyon, let's take a little tour what we can see in Lee Canyon. Sorry about the clouds, makes things a little darker, but there's the South Sister closest. North Sister is next, and Black Rock Sister, that little rock when you're up there. Wow, it looks large, but from this perspective, it looks like it's just a little blip. And then over here is Max Peak. And over here is McFarland Peak. By the way, on Las Vegas Area Trails, there are pages with descriptions of the route to all of these, and with video. Okay, then looking down, there you see the Bristlecone Pine Trail. If you look carefully, you can see portions of that trail. And then looking almost straight down to Lee Canyon. There's a reservoir down there above the ski area. And there is the ski lodge and the trailhead parking for the Bristlecone Pine Trail, Upper Bristlecone Pine Trail. Then you can trace Lee Canyon Road all the way out to the valley, and across the valley is, you can see it over the tip of Mummy Mountain, Mummy's Head. In the distance is the Sheep Range. And too bad for the clouds, but this is nature. You take whatever nature offers. And then let's take a look straight down Lee Canyon Road, and there is Upper Lee Meadow, where the beast is parked. We got to get back down to Upper Lee Meadow. So that's going to be quite a trip. And just give you an idea of the ridge that we took. You see right up here, there's a high point, and you see the ridge going down from that high point. There it goes. That's what I call the Lee Canyon mid-ridge. And it takes you all the way down to Lee Canyon Meadows. Okay. And of course, Mummy's Head, the main summit of Mummy. That's 11,500. I think we are above 11,300. We might be 11,400 or 500 on Lee Peak. I'll have to check when I return. We're only about 500 feet below the elevation of Charleston Peak there. So there you have Charleston Peak and the ridge line, the south ridge of Kyle Canyon, from Charleston Peak to Griffith Peak. And then further on down, there's Harris Mountain. There in the light, you can see La Madre Mountain, that permanent snowfield, which is the Devil's Slide made of limestone. And then just the tip of Fletcher Peak. So that gives us, and there's Mummy's Toe. And again, pages on LasVegasAreaTrails.com that describe, video document all of these locations and how to get there. So there you have it. Lee Canyon, Upper Lee Meadow, to the summit of Lee Peak. There's the summit box. And of course, there are steeper ways to get up to Lee Peak, but we're not going to try those. I have enough trouble with heights doing what I did. I'm definitely not made for mountain climbing, but it's just so beautiful up here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to head down this way. So we came up this slope. I'm going to head down this slope over here, reconnect with the North Loop Trail, take a left, and then make a beeline back the way we came. So, yeah, and in the distance over here, there's Pahrump. And in the far distance, you can't really see it at all, would be Telescope Peak on the far side of Death Valley. Too bad it's not a clear day, because then we would see Telescope Peak in all its glory. Okay, so rest a little bit and then down this ridge, reconnect with the North Loop Trail. Here we go. and experiencing rain and hailstones up on Lee Peak. So yeah, like I said, it's the last thing I expected for today, being that it's 106 degrees in the Las Vegas Valley. But yes, very cool and wet. So looking forward to descending. Here we go. And this descent from Lee Peak is much more gradual. I'll show you where it connects with the North Loop Trail. We've got a ways to go still, but you can see that it's much more gradual than the ascent. And it's a nice little change, because we've been on a lot of slopes today and there's more to go. So it's nice to be in a place where we don't have the radical slopes. Okay, continuing down, you can see Charleston Peak there, and then we're continuing down to where we will connect with the North Loop Trail. Charleston Peak is a point of reference. I was heading down this slope, this more gradual slope, but what I'm seeing here is the North Loop Trail just below. And so I'm going to angle over in this direction and head down to the North Loop Trail and then take that back to the gradual ridge. It's not really gradual, I guess, after being on it a few times, but it's more gradual than other approaches. So it's the Lee Canyon mid-ridge. We'll take that back down. Okay, reconnecting with the North Loop Trail. Immediately below, there's a few little tricky spots on this wet, loose, rocky slope, but yeah, we've made it from up on the summit of Lee Peak, and now we are heading back to the North Loop Trail, and then we'll take a left and head over to the mid-ridge to Lee Canyon and take that down to Upper Lee Meadow, where we began. Wow, I'm halfway down the mid-ridge. I've navigated the steeper rocky section, the upper bluffs up here, and yeah, navigated from Lee Peak in a hailstorm, and the ground was literally white with hailstones along the ledges. So that's quite an experience. And then navigating the slopes up above that were just saturated, loose rock, avalanche slopes. But you know, I did not slip once, so it's not as bad as you think it would be. Anyway, now I'm on the wide open area, ridge top, and so I've got a little reprieve from those avalanche slopes before I hit the lower rocky bluffs. Yeah, and it's warming up. Wow, it was cold up there. So I'm still shivering a little bit, but yeah, made it down this far, which is the toughest part of the ridge, actually. So I'm shaking a little bit. Sorry about the video. Okay, continuing down. Okay, things are warming up somewhat. I'm at the cairn that tells me to go down through the gully, the gap in the cliffs. Still shaking, still cold. I've just covered this area, this wide ridge, one of the nicest sections. But yeah, the sun is out, which is nice, but it still has not warmed up a whole lot. So yeah, heading down to the lower cliffs and bluffs, and then we'll be on the lower ridge. Okay, this has been quite a day. It's the third Saturday in July, and all of that, the hailstorm, the rain, the ice on the ground, that's the third Saturday in July. Okay, we're halfway down the gully, and just a quick note, there are two terraces. There's the upper one, which is right here, and it's a cliff that you can skirt. And there's one that looks very similar below. And the upper one, if you're on the way down and you're thinking, yeah, I need to skirt the cliff, that is too high. You're going to end up in a dead end. I can tell you because I did it. You need to keep heading down the gully, and then you're going to circle around another cliff and hug the edge of it. It's going to look pretty similar to that. So, yeah, keep heading down. Down the chute we go. Made it through the gully. Now it's just a case of hugging the edge of the cliff. And I guess if I continued straight down this gully, I would end up in the ski area. So that's an interesting alternate way to go. I don't know what I'm going to do. Okay, here's what I decided. As you can see, we've left the ridge. I'm not going to hug the cliffs up there and head down that ridge. I want to see where this gully leads. Hopefully not to a drop off. And it looks like it should lead to the ski area. We'll find out. But yeah, it's a different way. We're going to give it a try. And there you can see the ski area below. And that looks like the either the top or the bottom of the ski lift. It's definitely moving the cable up and down. Okay, let's go down there. Well, this gully's looking pretty good so far. It'll be interesting to see where it lands. If it lands in private property or what. But yeah, if you continued up from the bottom, you would actually hit the mid-ridge. So this could be another way to summit the Lee Kyle Canyon upper ridge. We'll see. We're not down at the bottom yet. Quick 360. Yeah, it's almost leveling out a bit there. And there you see looking up. Yeah, a lot of plants. I've had to skirt the upper ridges of this gully. But for the most part, very doable. It's no more difficult than that ridge that would have retraced my steps down to the Upper Lee Meadow. Continuing to follow this gully downward. Yeah, only so far, the upper end was steep. Down here, more lower in the gully. It's It's wide open and fairly gradual, but we'll see what things look like below. We do not know. There could be a drop off at any point that causes us to search around for alternate routes. I think the ski area, yeah, I see people in the ski area right up here. So I could actually traverse over to the ski area and take the ski area the rest of the way down. There are people hiking around, which means that basically they started out at the lower area and decided they wanted to walk up the ski run just to see what things looked like. So yeah, I'm gonna angle over in that direction. I think it'll be a lot more smooth than what we're looking at ahead of us. Okay, looking around up here, there's another wash that goes upward, and that goes up to the plateau area that we summited before. Interesting. This could be an alternate route. In the meantime, here is the top of the ski run, and they're giving people rides. Middle of the summer. Getting over across looks like quite the challenge, but it's definitely possible. Let's go ahead and give it a try. They may have some rule that you cannot walk on the ski run. We don't know. We're going to find out. By the way, down below is the trailhead for the Bristlecone Pine Trail, the upper trail. And here you can see South Sister, North Sister, and Black Rock Sister. And then over in this direction, McFarland Peak. So there's quite a bit of reference points all around us. The big question though is what's it going to be like to get down? Maybe I'll take this gully, this wash, down to where it ends below. We don't know. We're going to find out. Yeah, let's go ahead and head down this wash, see where it leads. There's the ski area up there above that ridge. And here is the wash leading up to the plateau, the other side of which is the North Loop Trail, Mount Charleston North Loop Trail. So, making a lot of connections here. But I'm curious about where this wash empties. So let's take a look. Okay, redirection. Here's a little trail that I'm on. And it looks like it's going to lead more gradually to that ski run. So let's go ahead and follow it. The wash is below. And as you can see, lots of boulders and debris. So I think this might be the better way to go. Let's see where this ends. And by the way, here you can see the sisters, south, north, and Black Rock Sister from from left to right. Getting a little loopy here. And then here is Mummy's Head and Mummy's main summit area. So making a lot of discoveries as we go. let's see where this little trail leads. And by the way, there ahead, let's see. Yeah, there's Upper Lee Meadow. And I imagine if you look real closely, you might even be able to see the beast parked there. What are the chances? I'm now on a ski run that leads straight down in a very gradual way. So we'll be on Lee Canyon Road before too long, down at the ski area. Okay, and our goal is the meadow, Upper Lee Meadow, which is down in, oh, come on, somewhere down there. There we go, right in the center. By the way, looking up this ski run, there is, wow, that looks like a decent approach right up this ski run to the plateau up there. Interesting. So that would be this route. And continuing on down, by the way, we are now in civilization, Frisbee games. Just passed through the Lee Canyon ski area. It's quite the summer recreation spot. They've got archery, they've got the ski lifts, a number of other games, and some kind of contraption that you sit in a chair and they swing you around on a rope. So I'm sure there's a name for it. But here you can see Mummy Mountain. There's a good view of the approach ridge that we took. And you can see it angling up to that plateau. We summited on the left side of the plateau. Hit the North Loop Trail, Mount Charleston North Loop Trail, and then took that from the plateau over to Lee Peak, at least the base of Lee Peak, and left the trail to take the summit approach. So that's pretty much the story of this whole day. And down we go. Now it's just a matter of getting back down to the Upper Lee Meadows. I guess the lower Bristlecone pine trailhead is still a thing. I thought they had discontinued it because I did not see the sign from below. Maybe I just missed it. Anyway, yeah, you can do Bristlecone pine trail from below. Take the fire road. Or you can do it from the upper Bristlecone Pine Trail. On Lee Canyon Road, watching for the meadow, Upper Lee Meadow parking. Back at the Upper Lee Meadow, and there is the beast. What a circuit. Amazing day. What we did is we started where the beast is parked, went up this hill, took a right at the top, and that led to a gradual ridge. Well, sort of gradual. It's very steep in places, as I mentioned. In some places, 18-inch elevation gain per step. But a lot of it was also gradual. And it's all class 2, pretty easy going. So we got up to the top of the ridge and met up with that plateau up there on the left side, and then traversed on the North Loop Trail, Mount Charleston North Loop, to Lee Peak, where we encountered a hailstorm, and the trails were little creeks, running water, and where they weren't running water, they were white with hailstone ice with cliff drop-offs. Very interesting. And coming down the avalanche slopes, all the soil was loose, but I didn't slip once. There was enough traction. Came down the mid-ridge to the gully passage through the cliffs. Decided to take it straight down. It ended at the Lee Canyon ski area, which is quite an amusement park. Lots of different rides and things to do. Then took from Lee Canyon ski area, took the Lee Canyon Road down back to our starting point and the beast. So what an epic adventure. Lots of fun today. Back at Lee Canyon Meadow, and you can hear thunder still, which would be up in the mountains above. And we are in a warm spot now. Wow, it was cold up there and icy. Anyway, total time for this adventure was 10 hours. And every minute was exciting and fun. Okay, back home.